Hey Charlie, guess what time it is?
It's Shoal time, baby.
Yeah, welcome back. It's a very special episode of the Shoal Weekly podcast. Still season 2, is it? Are we calling this season 2? Yeah,
so.
It's still season 2. Season 2's been very short, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah.
Maybe we should extend it to the next festival. I don't know.
Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how the summer goes. I know life is getting a bit busier now, but here we are. Yes, Shoal Weekly podcast. Very special episode this week because we are kicking things off in our summer British festival. What did we end up calling it again? Shoal Britannia?
Britannia.
Beautiful. And no doubt that our listeners at home have seen the posters on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Speaking of those, do go and follow our socials for some updates. We are going to be doing Shoal Britannia for the next 3 weeks, so end of June, into the first week of July. And we've got some really, really good films to talk about.
Just say that, promise the audience that it's not as Brexit as it seems.
Yeah, no, I think we should. I think we should start off today by talking about the actual festival and like why you decided to do it. But before we get into that, as always, do be sure to follow our socials for updates. Hit the notification bell, drop us a like or a follow. And if you have any films that you want us to break down going into season 3, which should be starting end of July, start of August, do be sure to leave a comment either down below in the YouTube comments or send us a message on any of our socials and we will get that on the list. We've got a lot of films to get through today. I always find that doing these festival episodes, like they're always, I don't know, like if we settle on a really good film, I always feel quite sad to like have to move on to talk about something else because like, you know, we've only got like an hour and if it's a really good film, like 15 minutes just doesn't seem enough. But here we are. We're gonna start kicking things off with A Hard Day's Night by the Beatles. But before we talk about that, Ben, how's your week been, mate? You've been quiet so far.
Well, you know, just letting you guys present Shoal Britannia. You know, because we're all Brexiting.
I'm really proud of both of you for like not singing Shoal Britannia.
Oh, I was close, bro.
The episode isn't over yet. I think we might have to introduce the jingle next week. You know, for episode.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. What have you been watching this week, mate?
This week, I have had, aside from all of the films that we've been sent away to watch by Charlie, I've been watching a little bit of, I want to say light-hearted TV, but having realised what I've watched, it's not been very light-hearted. I've watched the Amazon own series Invincible, which is a, it's about superheroes, and if you're over the age of 16, you should go and watch it.
Yeah.
Oh, the cast, honestly, it's just brilliant. I was in awe of it. I thought it was incredible. Also,
you always know when it's J.K. Simmons, don't you? Like straight away, you know, like Mustache Man, and you're like, "Yep, that's J.K. Simmons straight away."
He's just got like a little bit of gravel behind his voice.
Yeah, like, not quite my tempo. Not.
That's the one. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Have you seen it, Chaz?
What's that, Invincible?
Yeah.
No, but Kieran won't stop banging on about it.
It's worth a watch.
Every single time I talk to him, he's like, "Have you seen it yet? Have you seen it yet?" And I'm like, "Not yet, not yet."
You should watch it, mate. It is good.
I've watched the first episode with him, and I really enjoyed that. The twist at the end is really cool.
I know, right? It's
so
horribly gory.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Grim.
I think it definitely. I can't decide what's gorier, that or Castlevania, because it's a slightly different art, like a slightly different kind of drawing, like in the way it's been done, and I still can't decide what's worse.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still leaning more towards Castlevania just because of like the religious connotations and like it's darker as well.
So it's definitely dark. But
Invincible is so bright in like daylight, and and very sci-fi, whereas Castlevania is just all of your worst fears rolled into one.
The way it like unfolds reminds me of like Watchmen or something like that.
It's
a subversion of like the superhero trope. It's quite cool.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's. I mean, this is going off my personal. You're going to hate me for this, but it's not as boring as Watchmen.
Well, that's a fair comment. Watchmen is long.
The film's good though. I've only watched a few of the series though, but it didn't click with me. The series.
Right.
I mean, the film didn't click with me. I just couldn't.
Okay.
I just didn't like it. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I found Invincible was brilliant. My favorite thing about it though, is that they never say the word invincible. They never say invincible, and whenever like the intro for every episode, it like the last conversation of the intro ends with the character about to say invincible, and then instead of him saying that, they just cut to the title screen. Absolutely brilliant.
So it's like at the end of Age of Ultron where Captain America's like Avengers, and then it cuts away. Charlie, what have you been watching this week?
What did I watch? That's a very good question. Apart
What
from
did you watch
films,
that wasn't all of these films that we have to talk about?
What did I watch? I watched a film called Fatherhood, which is on Netflix.
Oh, is that Kevin Hart?
Yes, yeah. And oh my god, yeah, it's very hits the feels, but it's also incredibly funny in places as well, as you'd expect from Kevin Hart, I suppose. But
yeah,
definitely worth a watch. It's a bit more. It's like a quirkier Boyhood, if you know what I mean. Like it follows the daughter really well, and it's just make it heartwarming. Makes you want to give someone a cuddle, you know.
Oh well, you can always come around, mate.
Oh cheers! I got my body pillow of Joe. That's what I call it.
I sent it to you.
Yeah,
Christmas present.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm just picturing something way not safe for work.
All right, let's keep it to yourself then, mate.
Keep it PG. Come on,
keep it PG.
So I was also watching this week Clarkson's Farm.
Sorry, we're not talking about you anymore.
Oh, I wanted to get it in there.
Save it for the next one.
Okay, fine.
That we're not going to record in an hour. It's fine.
Fantastic.
We might have to edit this bit a bit heavily.
Nah, it's all right. All good.
Go on, Joe. What have you been watching, lad?
I watched Palm Springs.
Oh, is that with the guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yes, Andy Samberg.
Yeah, that's it. I thought it's good. What did you think?
I thought it was a refreshing take on that sort of whole Groundhog Day romance trope. And Andy Samberg's just very entertaining.
That's got J.K. Simmons in it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, we're having a J.K. week.
Yeah.
Oh, we just need to watch Whiplash now, and then we've got the and the original Spider-Man trilogy, and then we've got the Holy Trifecta. Sorted. No, I thought it was a good film, and it's the mum from How I Met Your Mother as well. I can't recall her real name. It's something like Christina, something like that. But yeah, she's great in it too. I think they made quite like a wacky couple.
When I was first watching it, because I didn't know it did that whole Groundhog Day thing, I just put it on just because it was there. And I was like, oh god, it does this Groundhog Day thing, and I was like, why have they done this? But then as it goes through, like it does improve, and it takes quite a nice sort of approach to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, I liked it a lot. Yeah, good film. Anyway, I think we should talk about Shoal, Britannia. Chaz, I'm going to start with you because this is your second sort of mini festival that you've wanted to do for this podcast. And you've actually had it you planned it since what, like January?
Yeah, probably. I've forgotten, to be honest, but yeah.
So here we are like 6 months later and it's finally here. I just want to know your thought process behind it, because from my point of view and going into this festival leading up to like what I thought I was going to talk about and the films that we were going to watch, I personally think it's a hard time to be patriotic at the moment.
Yeah.
So, like, why did you want to do a festival celebrating British film? Like, I just want to know your thought process.
Well, I think, as you say, it's a hard time to be like, come on England, innit? And I don't necessarily think that's what these list of films do, because I think a lot of them take a lot of stabs at the establishment and the effect that control over the nation has, like the decision makers have over the population. And it's just, we make good films in Britain, and I think we should celebrate that rather than think critically about the country as a whole at the minute, you know?
I think quite a lot of these films a lot of them are Film 4. And I was really sad. I remember when Film 4 got shut down.
It's a bit like the BFI has taken over that sort of mantle, hasn't it now?
Yeah.
It's being creating social realist films, really, I suppose.
I mean, you were in London for 3 years doing your degree in film, and I know you were at the BFI pretty much like every weekend watching something. So I feel like you're not only academically connected to a lot of these films, but also I don't know. I feel like well, I don't want to speak for you, but I know you spoke very highly of the BFI during your time living in London, which was somewhere that I know you didn't enjoy living that much.
Yeah.
So is this a trip down memory lane for you, or is it more like a new kind of new explorations that you want to?
For some of the films, it's definitely a trip down memory lane, but then others like Peterloo, I saw when I moved up to Manchester, and obviously that's based in Manchester. That felt like a very relevant film when I moved up to Manchester. But then these other films, a lot of them aren't really set down south, which is, I suppose, no one likes the south anyway, do they really? But
Yeah.
I don't know if I could say that, but
Well, no, I was going to say that, like, yeah. So today we're doing A Hard Day's Night, which is a film produced by the Beatles, but then we are going to go on and talk about I, Daniel Blake, This Is England, and Peterloo, which are all set in the north. Did you plan that, or is it random?
no, I didn't plan it, but I like that. I like that. That's a thing.
Yeah.
Like the north and the film industry have a very good history. Like they work well together, I think, especially for like social realism stuff, and it doesn't get appreciated enough, I don't think.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, there you go. Should we talk about A Hard Day's Night? Because I feel that's the most light-hearted film on this week's roster.
Yes. So you want to say you want to get the light-hearted one out of the way, and then we can talk about
all
these three really fucking depressing northern films that are
we can
basically
have a cry after. Yeah,
we can have a cry after. Yeah. Yeah, sure. I mean, Ben, you caught A Hard Day's Night, and you messaged me when you were watching it this morning. Why don't you? I don't know. What do you have to say about that film? Any info for our listeners at home? Because I feel like it's it's an unheard of one, isn't it?
I'd never heard of it before, so it was definitely a new one for me. I think I described the first bit to you as a hard day's watch.
Right.
Wow.
Okay.
Not to be too critical. No, I don't know. Maybe I'd gone in and I'd seen, when you click on a film and it tells you what category it is, and it was like, oh, it's a comedy. I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. Like, what is it? And I just didn't really find anything funny.
Really?
I mean, there's bits. There's a few bits where it was like a couple of chuckles, but like, I don't know, it just seemed really weird. And I mean, I couldn't get over the fact either that, like, it's the Beatles on a train and they're trying to chat up schoolgirls, and I was like, hang on a second, what's going on? Like the actresses in the film were like in school uniforms. It was just a bit dodge. Anyway, I don't know. It was all right. I mean, just kind of, it's a piece of history, isn't it? In and of itself, it's like. That's like today, One Direction just making a film that they're in, and it's about them, and it's not a documentary. Like, it would be pretty weird. Like, but historically, I think it's quite cool to see the Beatles in that way. It's
The cast list on Wikipedia is phenomenal. Like, get this, right? So John Lennon as himself, Paul McCartney as himself,
I can't
George
believe
Harrison I can't believe they managed to get Ringo Starr to play Ringo Starr as well. It's fantastic.
One of the worst bits of the film, though, is his first line. It's just, it's so like awkward. I can't remember what the exact line is, but then he does like a little chuckle at the end, and it's obviously been dubbed in, and the laugh is just so out of time with the movement of his mouth. It's so awkward. But
see, I thought it was going to be a documentary, but it's strange to see it's hard to suspend your disbelief when you know that this is a real life band. Like, they could have been playing like a fictional band.
Yeah.
And that perhaps could have been more, you could have suspended your disbelief a little bit more with that, maybe. I don't know.
But the thing is, they never mentioned that they're the Beatles, like as in themselves. They never mentioned the name, any of the characters. It's only ever on like the drums or something like that, or in the background on the sign. Never actually mentioned that they're the Beatles. It's weird, but it's definitely a cash grab. I'm gonna say that now. Like, they wanted to make bank. That's the only reason this film got made. Like,
I'm not gonna lie as well. There's a distinct lack of Scouse accents in there. I was really expecting,
apart from the Beatles.
Yeah, but they're not. They don't
Well,
sound
even
like
then,
Scots. Yeah, they don't. Like
they,
Yeah.
yeah,
really
they
toned it down. Like they really toned it down. And
yeah
they just
their
Irish
accents
side.
became very flattened out the more
Yeah.
famous they got, and then by the time John Lennon was doing Imagine,
Mm.
he was on talk shows just with a slight twang. And then if you listen to Paul McCartney now, it's not thick at all.
No.
I mean,
It's
I
not.
get that. I totally get that. You know, it's kind of it's a very, I suppose, the more time you spend away from Liverpool, like the kind of, should I say,
It just
Liverpool?
fades. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Mm.
does. It's quite. I think as somebody as living quite close to Liverpool myself, it's kind of if you interact with people that kind of live closer to Liverpool or in Liverpool, you just naturally drop into more of a Scouse accent just with everyday conversation. And the further you go away, you just kind of don't. It's one of those strange ones where it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's like people like kind of chameleon each other, but
Mhm.
it's a weird one. But yeah, I was just a bit taken aback. I don't know. There were some funny moments like when when they pull up to the first show and they get out the car and they all pile into this tent which is parked in the street. And they just
Yeah.
like lift the tent up and shuffle it to the door. It's
But
like
then there's a guy stood under it.
yeah, there's a
Not
guy
under it,
sitting
yeah.
there like, what the hell's just happened? So there's some funny gags in there, but then there's like bits where it's all sped up and it's I just really disjointed, didn't really kind of get into it. But like I said, and like you said, they're just making dollar, and it's quite funny. It's quite interesting historically to see them all. And they're all like proper like lewd, like just gawking at all the women. It's just yeah, it's funny.
One of the funniest bits for me is when they're having an interview with the press, and I think one of the press ladies says like, "Oh, and what do you call this haircut? Like your hairstyle?" And then I think George Harrison's like, "Oh, this is called Arthur." It's just little stuff like that. I'm like, that's so funny. I love it.
Do you reckon a lot of it was improvised?
I think, yeah, like bits like that. I think definitely were, yeah.
Okay,
But
interesting.
then another funny bit for me is because the whole thing centers around Paul having a grandfather who's like this
Oh,
like
his grandfather,
yeah, he's just a weird little character, little old man sort of thing.
but he's also Irish, which
Yeah,
is
he's also Irish, yeah. But he'd first introduced him to the rest of the band, and he's like, "Oh, this is my grandfather," and then I think like George or John's like, "No, it's not. I've met your grandfather." And it's just like little meta things like that. I think it's class.
I think it's amazing that it manages to creep up a lot of lists for like greatest films of all time.
Yeah, because
I think
it's not, is it? Like it's just strange.
I think that just is apropos to like the success of the Beatles, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
I just can't think of a band that could that could pull off a film.
One Direction, mate.
Nah,
yeah.
because it would just be taking the piss out of a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what kind of band could make a film with a budget of $189,000 and gross 11 million, which in 1964,
64, yeah.
that's a lot, and I can't see One Direction being maybe Harry Styles on his own, but I mean Dunkirk wasn't just riding off the back of Harry Styles, was it? I don't know. It's interesting.
I feel like it is one long music video for them, though.
Oh yeah.
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 The
They just like
songs are
drop
class.
into. Yeah, they are good.
Here's a little fun fact
that'll
that'll blow your mind. It's one of only like 2 or 3 films that are rated U, which in the UK is our BBFC rating for like all audiences. So anyone of any age can watch or buy this film. It's one of only 3 U-rated certificate films to mention cocaine.
I was going to say,
he sniffs a Coke bottle, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes a reference to cocaine. But then, funnily enough, the film had to be edited slightly upon release back in '64 to obtain the U certificate because the phrase "get knotted" was judged inappropriate for a U film and had to be removed. But making a joke sniffing a Coke bottle apparently wasn't. So yeah, there we go.
There's also a bit in the film where they're in like a hotel room and one of them goes to put something in a cupboard and then just like doesn't even like acknowledge it, but comes back and goes, "There's a guy in the cupboard," and then the rest of them go and check, and it's like, "Oh yeah, there is a guy in the cupboard," and it's never mentioned again. It's class. Like there's such like Monty Python sort of humor before it was Monty Python. I think it's great.
Yeah. There was actually a novelization of the film as well, which just adds to your cash grab
What was there?
judgment. Yeah. So in
Jeez.
1964, they published a novelization of the film. John Burke wrote the novelization and described it as, it was based on the original screenplay by Alan Owen. And fun fact about the novelization, it was actually the first book in the English language to have the word grotty in print.
Nice.
Which, again, I'm just going to repeat myself. That is just apropos to the influence and the power of the Beatles. Let's talk about I, Daniel Blake.
Let's get depressed. Woohoo!
Let's get depressed. Yeah, so for listeners at home, if you haven't managed to catch I, Daniel Blake this week, I, Daniel Blake is a film, quite a heavy-hitting one. It's about a man called Daniel Blake. Would you believe it?
No.
It's by legendary British film director Ken Loach, and critics just absolutely love this film. It was distributed by the BFI, so hence why it's on this list. Thank you very much, Chaz, for putting it on the roster. Premiered in 2016 at Cannes Film Festival and actually went home with the Palme d'Or. So that's a pretty big award, and was nominated for every BAFTA under the sun, and grossed something like 16 million as well, which is not a lot for 2016, but for a really small budget film, fantastic.
I wonder how much, like, did Ken Loach donate any of that to charities and stuff? I'd like to think that he would, but
yeah, I don't know. That was something I'd have to look up.
Or is like the acknowledgement from the film about the problem enough? Like,
maybe he didn't take payment for it. Maybe that 15. Maybe it was just cast and crew. But it is Dave Jones, who plays Daniel Blake. It is his film debut. He's actually he is from the same area. So I should clarify, Daniel Blake is a story about a titular character. He is this 55-year-old working class gentleman living in Tyneside, so it's up in the north of England near Newcastle. And he suffers a heart attack before the events of the film, and the film opens with him trying to secure some, like health and welfare benefit, because he can't go back to work at the moment anyway. And his doctor has said that if he does any more manual labor, he'll have another heart attack. So the whole film is his struggle, being this working class man who doesn't even know how to work a computer. It's his struggle of just trying to apply and to get an appeal for the fact that he's been turned down for this benefit. So he has to then go on job seekers allowance, and he has to be pounding pavements. And it's a very difficult film to watch because you feel so sorry for him. He also meets this Londoner who moves up to Newcastle, this young girl who has to resort to prostitution just to feed her children. And so full spoiler alert for the film, in the end, Daniel actually ends up suffering a heart attack because of all of the stress caused by the Department of Work and Pensions. There we go. So yeah, it's a difficult film to watch, but I think it's an important one for British people, especially, this film came out in 2016 at the height of the conservative Labour
austerity.
Like, yeah, that's a perfect way to describe it. And I think the biggest thing that this film reminded me of watching it, not because it was similar in any way, but because it reminded me of the pitfalls of that film, was Nomadland. And I think, Chaz, you and I have had a conversation about this before, that poverty porn films just don't sit well with us.
Yeah.
So
however, this one.
yeah. So I think going back to our last festival when we looked at some of the Oscar films, you can go and watch and listen to all those episodes on Spotify and YouTube. There was an episode where we bit of a plug there. There was an episode where we talked about Nomadland because it went home with the Academy Award, And I remember saying to you that it was such a boring and like soulless film
Yeah.
because it was essentially this woman like Daniel Blake, this woman in her 50s who had lost everything and just decided to become a nomad and travel in her late husband's van. And the way that, and no discredit to Chloe Zhao, like she's a very talented director and cinematographer, but there was no soul in that film because it's basically, oh hey, you're poor and you're going to be fine because you're enlightened. Like,
Yeah.
enlightenment will feed you and pay your bills. Don't worry about money.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't sit well with me because it's not reality. Like, you can drive and be a nomad and drive around in your van for as much as you want, but at the end of the day, you need to feed yourself, you need to look after yourself. And
Yeah, I think both the characters are living in quite heavy capitalistic societies, aren't they? And you just can't enlighten spirits. Don't, as you say, don't buy your food at the end of the day, do they?
Exactly. And that's what I really liked. Well, liked is probably the wrong word. What I really
Connected with.
connected with Daniel Blake with is it's a bleak film, and I actually wrote in the notes here, I was like, should the title have been Daniel Bleak? Because it is a bleak film and it's poverty porn done well because it's presenting a character to you, which I grew up in a small working class countryside town, and so I know 100 Daniel Blakes.
Yeah,
Down at the pubs, I know them all, and so I really connected with him, and I just loved that the film never once enlightened him. It was a one-man struggle against the establishment for the whole film, and in the end, it killed him. And as much as that sucks, that is a much more interesting and informative and educational film than Nomadland can ever be, for me. And it's just such a more of a wake-up call. And I was a bit worried, not gonna lie, I was a bit worried halfway through the film when he did the spray painting, when he spray painted Daniel Blake on the side of the Department of Work and Pay. I was a bit worried at that point he was going to like lead a revolution and everything. And the film never once made it bigger than him. The film was
never.
just So I would like to think that his words spray painted on the side of that building did lead to some kind of revolution, but it's supposed to be a realistic film set in a realistic Britain, and nothing has happened yet. So
No.
I don't, So I think that's
that bit of the film when all the people are cheering just really sums it up as like they're not going to take action against that. Like they support him, but no one's that arsed. Like, and that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No one's that arsed to actually take action and do anything about it. Hence, the Tories are still in power.
Yeah.
Like
interesting. It's a very interesting in terms of the political connotations because obviously the director is very famously he was part of the Labour Party for like was it like 50 years or something?
yeah, I think he still is, isn't he?
Yeah,
Probably,
and, he's and we mentioned before, Jeremy Corbyn endorsed the film naturally, and it very much points the finger of blame squarely at the system, which I think is definitely in contrast to what the general media and what the government, the ruling government would suggest, and what they like to make the narrative, which is that the problem with the reason for poverty and the blame of poverty is on the individual.
Yeah.
And the film definitely does not hold back in going the complete opposite way, and it very much is very against the system, which is I think is good because there just isn't enough evidence of that, and there isn't enough kind of media about that, and how actually the system is a bit broken, and more than a bit broken, it is actually downright
beyond repair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a bit extreme, but like, yeah, it is definitely geared against, and there's some real hard moments where, you mentioned one of the big things in the film is that he just doesn't even know how to work a computer, and now for us, it's just like this is as much second nature as it is breathing. And but for somebody who's never touched a computer in their life, never had to use one for work or anything like that, it really does a really good job of showing their inability to use one. And as somebody that's works with computers a lot and has an education capacity, it's actually a very good depiction, and it's quite close to accuracy. But yeah, there's that particular scene where the worker in the welfare office is helping him with the computer, and she's quite literally, frankly, told to stop doing it by her boss because it would set a dangerous precedent. You know, that the individual is not to blame, and it's quite hard hitting in that aspect. Which like I said, it's good. It's good that there is some exposure to that. And yeah, it's quite interesting actually. There's off the back of this, not really off the back of this, but I think some of the press that it generated. So yeah, I suppose you could probably say off the back of it, they actually found out that so the Department of Work and Pensions actually have figures. They actually have, they kept track of basically people that have been ruled, like Daniel Blake was in this fictional case, essentially was ruled is invalid for work, but were then sent back to work. And I think it was something like 1,200 people died in between the period of like 2011 and 2015 or something.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's crazy that so many people died because they were just told, "Oh, you have to go on job seekers." And for those of you who might be unaware, if you're on job seekers allowance, you actually have to provide proof that you are looking for work 35 hours a week, which is
It's a full-time job, isn't it?
Is a full-time job. That's 7 hours a day, and it's stressful. And it's as opposed to what they should have been on, which was basically just a disability benefit that they can't work, therefore they need to be provided for by the state. That's how our system works. But for whatever reason, because of paperwork, bureaucracy, then they weren't able to do that, and so goes the story. But yeah, it really does. It's a really hard hitting film.
I've got a hard hitting movie inaccuracy for you as well. So in the film, Daniel's offered a drink of water from the water cooler at the job centre. But actually, water coolers were removed from job centres as part of Tory cuts. So there we go. Yeah, that just sums up my thoughts on that is the epitome of the attention that our Conservative government has towards working class areas. So, but this is a film podcast and not a political podcast, I suppose, at the end of the day. But I mean, Ben, you never watched Nomadland, did you? You haven't seen it yet.
But I've seen the premise. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, I'm just wanted to get your opinion on the whole poverty porn thing. I think just poverty porn in general it's a very hit or miss, isn't it? I think this was definitely a hit. It
in terms
wasn't
of profiting. What do you mean by define what you mean by poverty porn more? Do you mean
like it's a piece of art, a piece of media that, in my opinion, poverty porn is like a piece of media that is produced to elicit feeling from people who aren't in that in that situation,
middle class or upper class people.
Right.
For example, whenever you watch Red Nose Day or Children in Need, that is the definition of poverty porn. And then so sometimes films like I, Daniel Blake, or This Is England, or Slumdog Millionaire, or Nomadland, they'll do these films, and it's like, hey, look how poor people are. Like, don't you feel sad for them? Come and buy a ticket and watch the film, and stare through a window like it's a zoo, and then go back to your lovely cozy home.
Yeah, and feel a little bit better about yourself because you've watched a film about poor people.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. There's I think there's a few charities that came off the back of Daniel Blake that kind of used it as a bit of a platform. I think a couple of food bank ones, because obviously there's some quite titular scenes in the film, isn't there? With the food banks and the two main characters, well, one of which uses the food bank and the other does not. Kind of out of shame and everything else that goes on in the film. So I suppose maybe in it being kind of poverty porn in that sense. It's got a little bit of, it's done a bit of good maybe, but at the same time, I think it can just be taken and twisted by whoever really wants to take it and twist with it. For example,
Yeah.
a lot of there's pretty much the instant, like one of the main things of the critics is like, oh, it's a great film, but a communist made it. Like a left wing. It was a very
Fuck's
left wing
sake.
director. It's like, hang on a second, whoa, you just kind of jump into considerations here. And as I was telling you guys earlier, if you could Google it, it's like loads of MPs just like slinging it at each other across the room. Like, you should go and watch I, Daniel Blake, and get an idea.
So it was used as cannon fodder then.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
surprising.
just like it's a bit,
But I feel like any film will have a message behind it. So it's
exactly.
I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing for this film.
No,
I think
it
if
is a
it
good
didn't
thing.
have the message, you'd be a little bit worried. And to be fair, like
No, exactly. I think, like I said, I think it is. It's probably one of its few kind in the kind of plus column for going against what is the rhetoric and what the media and our country purports as truth, and it's interesting. It's
But then obviously the inherent problem of film in general, any film, don't care what it is, any film has this one fundamental flaw in that it's a film, it's a contained thing. It allows an issue to become compartmentalized and swept away. So yeah, it sends a great message, but now it's like, cool, we've made a film about this guy called Daniel Blake. The North is suffering. Thank you for coming to my TED talk. And it's like, right, we don't have to talk about this issue anymore. We don't have to talk about this issue because it's already a film.
Yeah.
But
any film, no matter what the subject, is like propaganda, isn't it? Essentially, like you could take any film and say that it's propaganda. So that's film in general.
Like when 12 Years a Slave came out, it's like, cool, we don't have to talk about cotton plantations anymore. Like we don't have to acknowledge that happened.
And obviously, we should be talking about it. But when people watch a film like this, they're like, "Oh yeah, that solved it all. Now it doesn't exist."
That's
films, the illusion, isn't it, that comes about from it.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, definitely. Films don't solve problems; they
create them.
Okay, I think that's another can of worms. Speaking of a film that creates problems,
oh dear.
Sorry, that was terrible. This is England's our third film of the evening. Yeah, I think I'm going to start off by saying easily my favorite film so far at the festival. It was fantastic. Chaz, why don't you give us a rundown of this one?
Yeah, okay. So it follows a young boy who is a bit lost. His father's died in like the Falkland Wars, and we're in like a setting of a broken England. It's like nationalism's on the rise, anarchy's on the rise, Thatcher's in power, and this boy is like being bullied because his mum can't afford to buy him all the the new clothes, and he doesn't look all that hip, and he essentially gets taken on by this skinhead group, and their main like their leader he's like a nice bloke. He believes in like love, peace, and all that. And then about halfway through the film, I'd say it is, this other guy gets released from Combo. He gets released from prison, and he sort of takes over the group and divides it with his racist opinions.
Yeah,
he has this opinion that the black community in Britain are stealing all the jobs from all the white people.
Yeah, and also Asian communities as well.
Yes,
yeah. Heavy film, heavy stuff. Ben, did you watch this one?
Didn't get this one, no.
No. Oh, yeah. I think you really missed a good one here. You wasted your time watching A Hard Day's Night.
All right. Yeah, but you had some good tunes, though, Ben.
Yeah.
Well, he did miss out, on getting depressed for a second time around.
That's true. You do want to do that, to be honest.
Have either of you watched American History X?
I haven't, but I've heard good things. Well, it's a good film.
This is definitely England's answer to American History X.
Right. Okay.
Because that film is set
with racism as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of it's basically a very similar story as American History X is set in Venice Beach, and Edward Norton played a neo-Nazi who went to prison for curb stomping a black kid.
Right.
And when he comes out of prison, the whole plot of the movie is he's trying to stop his younger brother from going down the same route. So his younger brother's like 14, and he joins a bunch of skinheads and believes in all of that stuff. And his brother comes out of prison, reformed, like he made black friends while he was in prison.
Right.
And he comes out a better person, and he basically tries to stop his younger brother from going down the same route. So it's got very, very similar vibes. And I kept thinking that all the way through watching This Is England.
Right. Right.
Except there's no real kind of savior in This Is England. It really is a very personal, intimate story.
Yeah.
So the young boy is what's his name? Sean.
Sean. Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's this 12-year-old trouble boy who lives with his widowed mother. Another big thing that really reminded me of, and you'll like this, Chaz, is wasn't the ending like just like the 400 blows?
Yes. Yeah.
Ah,
When
so
he looks
good.
into the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
What do
think
you
that's
think
very,
about that?
very intentional.
Yeah.
Because I feel it's got the story's got close connections to it with like what's his name in 400, Antoine, isn't it, in 400 blows,
Right.
is trying to find that solidarity that Sean's trying to find.
Yeah.
Because I feel like obviously it has its political angle, this film, but it's also much more about that kid being lonely and trying to find solidarity wherever he can. And in the end, that is with, well, not in the end, because he sort of, that forlorning shot, I suppose, but he finds it in people that are trying to exploit him, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised to learn that it actually spawned 3 successful TV like limited series as well.
Have you seen any of them?
I haven't. No, so this is the first time I've watched the franchise, so
wow.
I'll definitely watch it when I get a chance to.
They're not as good, but
Yeah,
this was the hard hitting point, and I think everything else for the franchise sort of fizzled out after
right.
this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of Stephen Graham's first films, isn't it?
Shock.
That's nice.
Speaking of failing franchises, did we tell you that Fast and Furious is out this week?
Hey,
we got him.
Got him. It won't fail, will it? It'll probably make an absolute ton of money.
Oh, of course it will. Yeah.
No.
I watched a video quite recently. Actually, it was on my TikTok. God. About it was like them like practicing for the film with the kid, and it was the scene when he goes into the shop to like rob it from the man of like Pakistani origin, and obviously he's in the film. He says a slur, doesn't he, to the man?
Yeah.
And it was the kid being like, "I don't think I can say this," and then it's offensive. But then all of the like staff on the film being like, "Well, that's why you should say it, is because we need people to know that it's wrong." It's just a really sweet moment of the kid being like, "Well, this is wrong. Why am I saying it?" sort of thing. It's really.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine the kid was such a nice, such a nice little kid.
Yeah, and he's been made to play this role, which is just like awful.
It's like an F word every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
C words here and there. Shit, all of that. It's a lot of swearing in this film. I think for a 12-year-old to do this role is phenomenal. Especially then, spoiler alert, towards the end of the film, Combo absolutely loses it and ends up murdering the only actual black member of the gang right in front of Sean. And I think just to act through that, he's fantastic. Yeah. He's so good. And also the aesthetic of the film as well. It's so 1980s Britain, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
They're all wearing Doc Martens with like ripped jeans, and
I know
some of the haircuts are on another level.
Yeah.
What is it? Woody's girlfriend? Her haircut. My God.
Yeah.
That's so 1980s.
It is. The little kid in real life, his name's Thomas Turgoose, and he'd actually never acted before. And from what I can gather, he was a bit of a troublemaker at school as well.
Right.
And that's why Shane Meadows really wanted him for the role. And he'd actually been banned from doing the school play for behaving badly. So when the film turned up at the school's door wanting to audition kids for the role of Sean, Shane Meadows like saw this kid who wasn't taking part because he wasn't allowed to, and what's his name? Yeah, Thomas basically just said to me, he was like, "I'll audition for you if you give me £5." And he
Love it.
auditioned for him. He got the role, and he did get his £5.
Man.
Yeah, apparently
was
the
his
director was
fee.
like, yeah, literally the director
Yeah.
was like, you can audition as well. It's all right. We'll talk to your teachers. You can audition, and he was like, I'll audition for you if I get a £5. So yeah, and now he's had a very successful acting career. So
You know, before we were on about I, Daniel Blake, in the
Mm.
scene there's a bit of graffiti on one of the walls, and it says Kez, which is obviously another Ken Loach film, which is really cool. Just a cool little nod
Oh,
to
okay, yeah.
where the influences of the film come from. It's really cool.
I was gonna say these films are so connected in that kind of northern spirit.
Yeah,
Like the cinematography and the color palette, it's all just
great.
yeah.
Yeah,
But it's all just so personal. I don't know whether that's because I'm not far from that place in where I grew up, or that I know so many, and I am myself, a working class person. I don't know whether it's because of that. It's so personal. Like, if there was a film like this is France, I probably wouldn't relate to it as much.
yeah.
But I even think that if you weren't English, I think it would still be a really personal film, because everyone has struggles and everyone is aware of class divide.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Why don't we hand it over to our resident Tory? No, I'm only
Right,
joking.
Charlie, what have you got to say about the film?
Hey,
Good
got
one.
him.
Nice.
Got him.
Nice, like that. Yeah.
But it was based on the director's actual experiences as well, so maybe that's why it felt
Personal.
quite. Yeah. I don't know. It had a great soundtrack though.
It did. Oh,
Yeah.
banger after banger.
Well, let's wrap up this episode with talking about Peterloo. I didn't actually catch this one, but I did catch a few clips, and from what I saw, really bad accents. But
Honestly, it's definitely a Manchester accent, that, isn't it?
yeah, mother, father.
Father. Let's get down to it then.
Why don't you talk us through this one as well, Chaz, and just tell us what you think and why you added it onto the list.
I think Ben will know more of the history behind it than me, but basically it follows predominantly a family in Manchester after the Battle of Waterloo and their sort of fight to get government reform on the labourers' rights, essentially. And it all culminates with the Peterloo massacre at the very end of the film. That's not really a spoiler because it's in the name, I suppose.
It happened.
yeah, and it happened.
You're about 200
Yeah.
years if you wanted to catch it live.
yeah.
Catch it live on BBC iPlayer.
Catch
The
it live.
Peterloo
So
massacre.
it's a very interesting period of history. So as Charlie said, essentially a pro-democracy rally was held in Manchester, and there's kind of all sorts of reasons why it started, but basically I think one of the main things was the government essentially was in order to promote, I think it was essentially British industry. Basically there's just huge import taxes on everything at the time, specifically I think grain in this instance.
I think in the film they mentioned it's like bread, like the bread tax.
Yeah, grain, yeah. So essentially I think it's kind of one of those where the working class, the poor in this case, needed some food and they couldn't get it. It was too expensive because they had to buy from British farmers and British markets and stuff. So they wanted, basically, they just wanted to see reform. And then interestingly, well, I suppose I don't know if it's quite interesting, but basically there was a if you're not familiar with the kind of the military history of Britain, we have kind of the professional side of our army, in this case in the 1800s. They had the professional side, but you also have kind of the part-time side, and the kind of typically referred to kind of yeomanry, and essentially operated kind of locally, and they would be formed of local people. Sometimes they'd be part-time. In the case of the Napoleonic Wars, they were shipped overseas and they did fight overseas in different in different cases. But they kind of always kept an English presence pretty much for this purpose, which was to essentially keep a lid on any revolting citizens or outbreaks of anything
Revolting citizens.
the government didn't like. Well,
Angling citizens.
the thing is you have to put into perspective Europe at this point in time.
Was it just
The
after like the French Revolution?
is only
Yeah.
French Revolution
America had
is-
just been independent for the past
exactly. So
20 years.
exactly, America has just declared independence in the last 50 years. France had just killed off its entire royal family about 10 years, 15 years prior, maybe 20 years prior at this point. Basically, every single person that was still in a position of power at this point is absolutely shitting their pants because they do not want to be killed and overthrown by the mob because they realize how powerful the mob was. In this particular instance, in the Peterloo massacre, it's actually I don't think you could really maybe lay the blame as kind of being a nefarious plot to just go and kill a bunch of people. I think it was a kind of tragic accident of the circumstances. The commander, the officer in charge of the yeomanry, actually just excused himself for that day. He just didn't turn up to work. He just went to the races. So essentially,
There's a scene of that in the film, yeah.
yeah, so essentially, like, it's just a bunch of panicked soldiers and, like, just with a mob of, 100,000 people, and they just didn't know what to do, so they just went out.
Start
really.
killing, which
Yeah.
is
I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, it obviously is quite a brutal period of British history, and it's quite, but I mean, it sounds bad, but if you look at it, there's only 18 deaths, which for a kind of a full cavalry charge, it's not that bad. But yeah, I mean, it's still British people killing British people on English soil, and it's not great. But yeah, when you put it into historical context, it's very complex, and it's actually a really interesting period of time. Like you said, it was basically France has just been defeated. So there's kind of this, high period where a bit of a lull where kind of we've won, now what? And they have to recover the economy and all of that stuff. So yeah, very complex piece of history. It's not really that taught about. It's not really taught or talked about really at all, unless you're very very interested in that bit of history or you have to do it for school.
well, I
Well-
would definitely have never would have known it was a thing unless this film had come out. So
I suppose English curriculums don't really want to teach English kids about English people like killing other English people. So I suppose it's probably hidden, isn't it?
yeah,
Or like just
yeah,
swept under the carpet, as is most English atrocities of the past 500 years.
Yeah,
yeah.
we're not too great at talking about British, like colonial Britain. Really, it's kind of
Mm.
a lot of history will focus on modern history in the British Empire, and
I think
basically
I was gonna say a lot of curriculums focus on like sort of
1914 onwards, basically.
yeah, and the
Really, yeah.
Industrial Revolution, which was only possible because of all the money we got from pillaging other countries.
Which
Yeah,
is why we get people like Combo.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I ironically, after watching This Is England, I actually watched Trevor Noah's stand-up on Netflix, where he was talking about like British colonialism, and it was so funny because he basically like embodied Combo. Sorry to go back to This Is England, but it just reminded me of it. Basically embodied Combo and was like, you meet all these people in England who are saying they're coming over here, taking our jobs, and Trevor Noah just basically said, but you're English. That's like the thing you're good at. You go to other
Yeah.
countries and take everything. All the people that are coming to immigrating to your country are just coming back to the motherland because apparently you owned them. So like, why are you complaining? So it's a very good stand-up. Go and watch it. We watched it this afternoon. It was very funny because I'd watched This Is England this morning. And then I went straight on to watching that because I needed something a bit more lighthearted. And most
Dealt
of
with
the
the same
stand-up
theme.
was him talking about the same thing. Yeah. So, Yeah, we're not great as a country at acknowledging our mistakes, and I think we've not to get too political, but I think a big problem with our generation is that we've produced a lot of like patriotic nationalists. You know, I think as soon as we won World War II, it was like, right, we just did a really good thing for the world. Let's now forget about the hundreds of years of really bad things that we did before that. And here we are. So, and then, things like Peterloo happened, and no one knows because I guess no one cares when you've won a world war.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean,
There we go.
definitely. There's a massive generalization. That is a massive generalization. I'll give it to you in spirit.
Well, this is a film podcast, Ben.
It's very convenient. Very convenient.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say there's quite a few instances where, are we the bad guys or are we the good
Yes.
guys? And the British history is kind of full of both of them, really. I mean, we're just talking about it with Peterloo. England basically beat Napoleon, and everyone else had surrendered to him, except for England. And if you thought that World War II was bad in that England, the fear of invasion and everything, I mean, Napoleon actually attempted to land on England. Never mind.
He did, yeah.
He actually sent boats across, and he, for all of the fact that he was, fighting for France originally as a republic, it very quickly became an empire, and as a government and as a like kind of the king plus the government, at the time was quite, hate to say the word revolutionary when the guillotine had just been employed in France, but they actually stopped. They stopped tyranny quite well. So there's a lot of criticism.
Yeah, I think we can agree to disagree. I think, well, not agree to disagree. I think we can meet in the middle and say I do agree. England has fought the good fight when it has had to, but those wars have been fueled by money that is rooted in colonialism and
yeah.
So I think it's a mixture of good and bad. It's glass half full and half empty. What'd you say, Chas?
I say Shoal is now a history and political podcast, not a film podcast.
We're branching out, people.
Yeah,
this festival is bringing us new things.
If you would like to hear Joe and Ben do their own side Shoal cast, which is political and historical, then let us know.
We'll have to think of a really bad name for it.
I will have no anything to add to that conversation, and
we'll just call it history and get on with
it. speaking of not adding any more to conversations, I think we're just about wrapped up with this first episode of Shoal, Britannia. It's been a heavy few films. We hope you have enjoyed it at home. We will be back next week though we're going to kick off with some Bond, and then a good old Ealing comedy. And then we're going to wrap things up with some Royal Shakespeare Company Hamlet. So stay tuned for that one. A bit more varied than this week. A little less
more light.
A little less depressing as well. But if you haven't caught any of these films yet, we do encourage you to go and watch them. Yes, they were heavy. They were bleak and difficult to watch. But I think if I can sum up all of these films in one go, it would be vital. Yeah. These are all vital films, I think.
Yes. Yeah,
so, thanks for listening. Do be sure to follow our socials for updates and news. We will be back next Monday with a new episode of Shoal.